Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we will learn how to use Table F, Solubility Guidelines for Aqueous Solutions. Table F tells us if a compound will be soluble or insoluble by giving us two tables. On the left here, we have ions that form soluble compounds. And on the right, we have ions that form insoluble compounds. Now, Table F, it gives us if something is going to be soluble or insoluble in aqueous solution, and we need to watch out for exceptions. We will do a couple of questions together. Now, before we get started on the questions, you do need to know some vocab that may be used throughout this video. Here are some vocab for this unit of solutions. Feel free to pause this video and to review. Now let's get started. Questions use keywords to tell you if they want you to look for something that is soluble or insoluble. For example, if a question says, which of the following is the most soluble? In other words, they're asking you, which of these is soluble? If they ask you, which one of these is an electrolyte? Once again, they're asking you which one of these is soluble, or which one of these has the highest concentration of dissolved ions. All of these three that I just mentioned. In other words, they're asking you which one is soluble. Now, let's go to insoluble. If they ask you which one of these is the least soluble, this is another reference to insoluble. If they're asking you for a poor or a non-electrolyte, they're asking you which one is insoluble. If they're asking you for low concentration of dissolved ions or a precipitate, which is a solid, they're talking about which one of these is insoluble. Let's get started on our first question. It says, according to reference table F, which compound is most soluble in water? So here we go, keyword. They want us to pick the one that is soluble. So let's get started with A. BaCO3. So I have barium and I have carbonate. So I'm going to look for either barium or carbonate under ions that form soluble compounds or ions that form insoluble compounds. So I'm not looking at the exceptions. I'm looking for the ions here or here for now. So I'm either going to look for Ba or CO3, whichever one I find is where I stop. So I'm going to go through here. Okay, so these are group 1 ions. Nope. Ammonium. Nope. Nitrate. Acetate. No. None of these is either barium or carbonate. Let's go to the next table. Here we have carbonate. Now, how do we read this? Carbonate is under where it says ions that form insoluble compounds. So this means that carbonate forms insoluble compounds, but it does have exceptions. So it forms insoluble compounds except when it's combined with group 1 ions or ammonium. So let's take a look. We have carbonate here bonded to barium. So carbonate forms insoluble compounds except with group 1 ions or ammonium. So what is barium carbonate? This answer choice A going to be? This is going to be an insoluble compound, because we know that carbonate form insoluble compounds except with one of these, and barium is not one of those exceptions. So it will be insoluble. Let's move on to the next one. So we have barium and we have sulfate or SO4. Once again, I'm going to look either here or here. And I already found sulfate right here. Sulfate is under ions that form soluble compounds. So let's take a look. Sulfates form soluble compounds except with Ca, Sr, Ba, Pb, or Ag. So let's see. Right now in answer choice B, sulfate is bonded to a Ba, which is one of those exceptions. So this would make BaSO4 an insoluble compound. So sulfate is usually going to form a soluble compound except with these ions. And since barium is one of those exceptions, that is what makes BaSO4 an insoluble compound. Now let's go on to the next one. ZnCO3. So I'm either going to look for Zn or CO3 in these two. Once again, what we have been doing for the last two. So I go and I see, okay, once again, carbonate over here. Carbonate usually forms insoluble compounds. Okay, if it usually forms insoluble compounds, then zinc has to be one of the exceptions in order for this to be soluble. I look at the exceptions, it says, when combined with group 1 or with ammonium, that would make carbonate soluble. But in this case, it's bonded to zinc or Zn. So this would be, once again, an insoluble compound. So our answer, we must know that it can only be the last one left, which is zinc sulfate. Let's look at sulfate. Sulfate usually forms soluble compounds, except with Ca, Sr, Ba, Pb, Ag. Zinc is not one of those exceptions, so this is a soluble compound. So our answer for this, they're asking us which one is the most soluble. The only soluble one is D. All right, let's move on to question number 2. Now, feel free to approach this question on your own. Pause this video and you can do it yourself, and then you can come back so we do it together. It says, according to the reference table F, which of these compounds is most soluble at 298 Kelvin and 1 atm? Now, there are times when these questions give you extra information to throw you off. So let's focus on the keyword here, most soluble. We know what most soluble refers to. Most soluble refers to a soluble compound. Let's ignore this and this. We don't have to worry about that. We're going to look on table F and we're going to see which one of these is soluble. So I'm going to go to the first one, AgNO3. Once again, I'm looking at these and seeing where I can find either Ag or NO3. Okay, let's see. Ag, I do not see in these boxes. Okay, so I'm going to go to NO3. NO3, I see it right here. This is nitrate. Now, nitrate is an ion that forms soluble compounds. Does it have any exceptions? No. So this means always soluble. Nitrate will always be soluble because it doesn't have any exceptions. So this one is soluble. At this point, we could stop here. A is the soluble compound. You can go ahead and look at the other answer choices, and you can see for yourself they are not going to be soluble. So let's go to B. It says AgCl. So once again, you're either going to find Ag or Cl in here or here. We find Cl right here. which is chloride. Chloride forms soluble compounds except with Ag, Pb, or Hg. In this case, Cl is bonded to Ag, so this will make it insoluble. And then we have PbCrO4. So I find either Pb or CrO4. I see CrO4 is over here, chromate. It forms insoluble compound except with either group 1 ions, Ca, Mg, or NH4. This is not one of the exceptions because this is Pb and it's not one of the exceptions that we see over here on the table. So that means that chromate with Pb is an insoluble solution. Now let's go to the last one, CO3. We have seen this before. It is right here. Carbonate forms insoluble compounds except with group 1 ions or NH4. Now, if you don't know, if you're not sure if Pb is a group 1 ion, you can always go to the periodic table and check for yourself. It is not a group 1 ion, so this will be insoluble. All right, let's go to the next one. Once again, feel free to try this one on your own and then come back and do it together. So this one is based on table F, which compound is least soluble in water. Least soluble. Keyword here, they want you to find which one is insoluble. All right, so let's go through them. First one is AlPO4. So once again, I'm either going to find the ion Al or PO4. If you scan the ions in these boxes, we find that we have PO4 over here on the right side. Phosphate. Phosphate forms insoluble compounds except with the following, except with group 1 ions or NH4. If you don't know if Al is a group 1 ion, feel free to go to the periodic table and check for yourself. Al is not a group 1 ion, so AlPO4 will be an insoluble compound. In order for this to be a soluble compound, Al must have been one of the exceptions, but since it wasn't, AlPO4 or aluminum phosphate is an insoluble compound. Let's go to the next one, just to see that we only have one insoluble compound here. Li2SO4. Now, lithium SO4 sulfate, lithium is right here. It's the first one. It's in the group 1 ions. And group 1 ions do not have any exceptions, meaning that they're always soluble. So this, soluble. Let's go to CaOH, calcium hydroxide. So we look for either a Ca or an OH. We find it right here, hydroxide. Hydroxide forms insoluble compounds except with, the exceptions include Ca, Ba, SR, NH4, or group 1 ions. Ca is one of those exceptions. So this would make OH a soluble compound when bonded to calcium. And the last one, we have Ag, C2H3O2, so we have silver acetate. If you look for acetate, it is right here. Acetate does not have any exceptions. So that makes this compound soluble.